All hostiles neutralized. Only one zone left, Agent.
Activating sonar!
What it is, what it look like. Welcome back to the channel. You are rocking with Agent R. We've been playing some XDefiant here on the channel, but I wanted to drop very quickly for you for the weekend some of the settings that I've been running for this build. I am rocking on a 1650, so like the title says, I mean, if this works here, it's gonna work for your setup surely, because 1650 is a low end card, right, versus your 30s and your 40s. So I'm going to quickly hop into settings here and show you what we've been running to try to max this out. And very quickly, I am running on a field of view of 100. I actually usually dial this back to even 90 sometimes, just because there are diminishing returns at a certain point as far as FPS goes. But I mean, if you need to see all the field, and by all means on this game, you probably should, with the strafing speed, you just bump that up, and that will affect the FPS range that you get. As you can like see in the top, it just sits at 120 FPS, because this is as much as the monitor gets. Some maps will hold that number better than others, like especially if that map is indoors. But moving on to the video graphics, I am a windowed full screen. I do tab a lot back and forth, but if you want the most performance out of this, then you would put it to full screen, right? We are on 1920 by 1080, as you can see there. Turn off, enable reduced latency and reflex low latency. It just doesn't really help for the setup. These things are default. Now, I think default that this DX12 renderer is set to yes. I actually put it to no. Did a couple of tests and did confirm that it does give you slightly more on DX11. Just play around with it, and if it doesn't affect you all that much, just set it back. There was a bug where DX11 had some color issues with HDR and stuff like that, but it seems to be fixed now, at least for me. So it defaulted to low. Obviously here we're going to turn VSync off, because we're going to control that by the settings, either for you for AMD Adrenalin, or just go to the control panel for NVIDIA, and then you can control that manually. We had this off, and I'm using RTSS to actually lock this to 120, but you could do this within here. But game settings don't usually do this as well as RTSS, so that's why that's the case. We're going to set all these to low. Now it will default to 75% resolution scale to get this same amount up here when you're running in game. And what I'm talking about, as you see in the clip, you know, above 100 in the 110s, that kind of range for this card. But you can set that to 100 and put the sharpening to about 8. I mean, it's on 7 by default. Everything else is going to be low. I mean, we are trying to be competitive here in this FPS. That's how we play these games, right? Now, we're going to keep scrolling down. We're going to leave everything off or low. Parallax mapping we're going to turn on. This doesn't seem to have any significant impact on FPS, but what it is doing is it's tricking the eyes. So it's going to add depth without the geometry attached to it. So it's going to make some of these flat objects, like especially bricks and things like that, look a little more detailed, which goes a long way for setting everything low but still getting some visual fidelity. We're going to set object detail to 100. Now, there's a bug in here. It always drops back 1. I think it's like default 20, but you can actually crank this up, and you're going to get more detail on like the guns and things around you, again, just for fidelity's sake. Now, extra streaming distance just uses more memory to give details for objects that are further away. You can play around with this, but it doesn't affect you a lot, especially indoors, but it will give you just a little more extra when you're looking at, you know, an opponent that's sitting off in the distance and you're not scoping in. Lens flare we set to off, water quality set to low. Everything else is going to be off or no, and that's pretty much how this is set up. And again, like I said, you can come in here and play with some of the things we talked about, but this game really isn't taxing as it is on the system. So be encouraged that if you have an older GPU, that you will be able to play this with some extra FPS, right? You'll definitely sit over the 60 cap, so you'll at least have that going for you. It's just a beautiful game. I love the colors in here. Love being able to run around, get some of that echelon vibe, right, from Splinter Cell and some of the other backgrounds that they have from Ubisoft. But that's all we have for you. We got some gameplay coming later on from the different modes that they've unlocked and some thoughts about everything as it's moving forward. But enjoy the game. Look forward to when it comes out, and it will be free to play. So I hope as many people hop on here and give this thing a chance. But until next time, this has been Agent R. Prove your meta.